welcome to the February the 6th, 1990 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie. And this is our history tape number 113, 113 tapings of history. And we bring to you very special people that are involved in the history of Grand Prairie, that have made history and are continuing to do so. And we are so honored today to have two very special, fairly long-time residents of Grand Prairie, Mr. and Mrs. Wendell Halsey. Dr. Halsey and Betty have lived here quite some time, and we're delighted to welcome you to the show, Wendell.
Thank you, Ruthie. We're glad to be here.
Thank you.
And Betty, I'm really thankful that you came when you said you just might not come with Wendell, because Wendell is so full of history and good things and happenings, and we're delighted to have you with us here today, too. First of all, we'd like for you to establish your genealogy, and so let's start with Betty. Betty, would you like to look out into your camera and tell us a little bit about the real Betty Bell Halsey, and name us your parents and give us some other statistics?
Well, my father's name is Odie Franklin Bell. My mother's maiden name was Jones. Her mother was half Cherokee, and they were from Alto, Texas. And then they came to live in what was called Hog Fork, Texas. I bet you don't know where that is.
Give us the county of Hog Fork.
Well, do you know where Cedar Creek Lake is?
Oh, yes. 114, number 114. And we are extremely honored today to have a wonderful couple that has had a very great impact on the history of Grand Prairie and continues to do so. And we want to take this opportunity to welcome our state representative from State Representative Seat 106, Mr. Bill Arnold, Your Honor. Glad to have you with us today.
Delighted to be here.
Wonderful. And Laura Arnold, beautiful wife.
Wonderful to be here, Ruthie.
Wonderful to have both of you with us today.
Thank you.
Laura, we're going to take you off of the hot seat first by letting you look out into your camera.
All right.
And we'd like to establish your genealogy. And if you would give us the name of your parents and any brothers and sisters that you would like to name drop, and tell us where your family came from. Would you do that for us?
Well, I certainly would be delighted to, Ruthie. I was born in Prairie, Texas, which is in northeast Texas, Lamar County, in 1931. I'll even give you a date there.
Wonderful.
And my parents were Mr. and Mrs. Wilson Riggs. And we later moved to Cooper, Texas. And I grew up in Cooper, Texas. Went all the way through school there. Finished high school there. I have one sister, Mrs. James Ward of Commerce, Texas. And
her given name?
Dorothy is her given name.
Okay, Dorothy.
Yes, and my mother's given name is Jean.
And her maiden name?
Is Harrison, Jean Harrison Riggs, and she is now married to Mr. Travis Carrington. They both live in Cooper. My father's deceased in 1979, and my mother remarried a man that she had known for a very long time, and they're very happily married now. We're just delighted about that.
That is
wonderful. They live a very rich and full life together.
And being raised in East Texas, in Paris, Texas, and then moving on to Cooper, were these large schools or small schools back in 1900 and about 39 or 40 when you started to school?
Very small schools, as a matter of fact. My graduating class had 32 in it.
All right.
And we had a very nice experience this summer. We celebrated our 40th class reunion. In fact, that was our first class reunion. And our son said 40 years out of high school. But we really enjoyed that. And we went back to Cooper, Texas, and had the reunion and met old friends that we had not seen in a very long time, and just had a wonderful time doing that. So, but yes, the schools were very small at that time. We knew everyone, and it was a great pleasure and a lot of fun. And
I'd like to
we
ask
enjoyed
you
it.
this, Laura. While you were in Cooper School, was there any one teacher or two teachers or several people that inspired you, that you said, oh, I'm just so excited about education and I just may go on to school? Was there any one person or teacher that you remember?
Well, it's really hard to maybe pick out one or two. particularly remember my first and second grade teacher. I guess they stand out more than any others. And then, of course, we were during the war at that time, and we had many substitute teachers, people who had sort of come out of retirement to be a substitute teacher. And the regular teachers were not there. But I guess in the 8th grade then I had another very outstanding teacher that I would always remember. It really inspired me very much then.
We're going to let you rest a moment. Now we're going to get to our Honorable Mr. Bill Arnold. Mr. Bill Arnold, I'd like for you to tell us about the genealogy of a very special young man. Would you look out and do that for us?
Thank you, Mrs. Jackson. I was born, well, actually my parents they're native Texans. They were born about a mile from each other in rural northeast Texas. My ancestry, of course, on my mother's side, came from Alabama, North Alabama, and on my father's side from Mississippi. I was born in Hopkins County, a place called Peerless. Attended school there.
Would you spell Peerless?
P-W-R-L-E-S-S.
All right.
Attended school there until later attended a consolidated high school called North Hopkins High School. And my graduating class was some smaller than my wife, Laura's. I believe we had about 20 in our graduating class.
All right. And what was the magic year that you graduated?
1944.
Okay.
Graduated in 1944, and then, of course, was soon entered the service. As you know, the war was on at that time.
All right. Now, did you have any brothers or sisters, Mr. Arnold?
Yes, I have 3 sisters and 1 brother. There are 5 of us.
Well, let's name them all, would you?
My oldest brother is named Jeff Arnold, and he resides in Michigan, has lived there most all of his adult, well, the last 35, 40 years. Has his family there, of course, and all. And then I have my next my sister. Is just older than, 2 years difference in all of our ages, and she lives in Hopkins County, close to where we grew up.
And her name?
Han, H-A-H-N. They traveled around. She and her husband went in the military, and they retired and moved back home.
Give us her full name and her husband's name.
Alaska, and her husband's name George, Han.
All right.
And my next sister is just under me. I'm the middle child.
Okay.
She too married a military man, and they traveled around a great deal. They live in Fort Worth now, or actually it's on the lake over close to Weatherford, and they're both retired now.
And you'll give us their names.
Locke, L-O-C-K, and Fred is the husband's name, and my sister's name, Helen. And then I have another sister, my baby sister, named Williams, Mary Jo Williams. Her husband's named Herbie. They too live in Hopkins County. They had a career in Dallas and then moved back down to Hopkins County, and I wouldn't say retired. He had an employment while there. However, he's retired now. And
Well, we've gotten through your family, and we've heard that you were in the service. Would you like to tell us the branch of the service?
Well, yes. I was in the Navy. I went in right at the end of World War II.
Okay.
I only spent about 15 months in the service.
Okay.
And then, of course, I was discharged, came out and started to college.
All right. And then when you came out of the military and started to college, did you go away to California or some exciting place? Tell us about your college career.
Well, of course, after returning from the service in 1945, I guess 46, I immediately started to school. And I started at East Texas State University and continued there until I graduated. And I majored in business and education, and liked my student teaching so well, I thought, well, if I can make a living doing this, I think this is what I'll do. And so I acquired a job teaching in Smith County, close to Tyler, and that's been my life ever since until I retired in '86, December of '86.
All right. Now, all of the time that you were going to schools in your community down in Hopkins County, came out of the Navy, was there any one person, teacher or commanding officer or someone that was just very special to you that inspired you, Billy Arnold?
I think so. I'd say my first grade teacher, Mrs. Perkins.
All right.
Actually, she was a Miss Perkins at that
All
time,
right.
Miss Perkins. I think probably had more to do with, I remember her more, perhaps than any other teacher. And then my senior high school English teacher, Mrs. Lee Wright Baden, who was a wonderful lady and an excellent teacher and had a tremendous way about her and was very helpful to me at a time in my life when I needed help, you know. And so I remember her as being an outstanding teacher and a very great person.
What did your parent do for a living, your father?
Well, my father did a lot of things. Of course, came off the farm, did some farming in early life, but later spent most of his life in oil field work.
Good. All right. We're going to let you rest a minute and get back with Laura. All right, Laura, would you like to tell us what your parents did for a living and then bring us on up to furthering your education?
All
Do that
right.
for us?
Yes, my father was in the retail grocery business for several years in Cooper, Texas, and my mother also worked in that area with him for a number of years, and he finally sold that business, and then he worked for another establishment in Sulphur Springs, Texas, until he retired from that. And I graduated from high school in 1949, and at that time I started to, in the fall, I started to school at East Texas also.
Okay.
But did not know Bill here until later on.
Did not know Mr.
No,
Arnold
I
while
did
y'all
not.
were in college.
Well, not until later on.
All
But,
right. Tell us about the later on. Bring us up
The
to date.
later on was the following year, as a matter of fact. We had mutual friends that introduced us to each other in, I guess, the summer of 1950. And we began dating in 1950, in the fall of 1950. And were married a year later in 1951. And at that time, I still had one more year of college to go, and I finished school that year and with the Bachelor of Music Education degree from East Texas State University in Commerce.
And you had planned maybe to teach music.
I had planned to teach music, and I did teach music.
All
After
right.
I was graduated, I was lucky enough to get a job at the same school that Bill was working in Smith County. So we did teach together there for 2 years before moving to Grand Prairie.
Yeah.
So I did some music work there and also first grade work there also. So I've been doing that for a long time.
That's what caught on, was the first grade that you began in that area then.
Well, yes, I really did like it, and as you know, I've stayed with it for a number of years, and I enjoyed the music very much, but I really did like working with the first graders, and so I did that for a long time. I later received a master's degree from North Texas State University in education with an emphasis in reading specialty.
And worked for how many years with the Grand Prairie ISD, and where?
Well, I completed 33 years of teaching in 1988 from Grand Prairie schools. However, 2 of those years were in Smith County. So actually about 31 years in Grand Prairie.
And at schools, would you like to name drop the schools where you
Well, I'd be
taught?
happy to. The first school I was in was at Houston Elementary School when we moved to Grand Prairie in 1954. And I taught there for 3 years, I guess it was, and then we had our first son in 1958, and I'll tell you about that a little bit later. But I've also taught school in Ben Milam Elementary School and back to Houston Elementary School. They moved me around a lot.
All right.
And then when Eisenhower opened in, well, whatever year that was, 17 years ago, I was there 17 years. When Eisenhower opened, I moved over there and stayed there until I retired. Really enjoyed my work there.
That's wonderful. Mr. Arnold, what brought you to Grand Prairie, Texas? Tell us the story.
Well, it's, I suppose, it was pretty interesting, at least to us. Lloyd Bowes actually is the person responsible for our coming to Grand Prairie. I had gotten to know Mr. Bowes through working in commerce during the time I was attending the university there. I worked at a Gulf service station, and I used to service his car. And That's
Well,
how
how
we got
exciting.
acquainted, and then he had moved to Grand Prairie at the time. At that time, of course, he was traveling salesman, but he later got back into the teaching and was a principal in Grand Prairie, and I met him at a homecoming, and he invited me to come over, and I did, and the rest is known that Mr. Chambers hired us, and we have been here for a number of years.
All right, and where did you begin your teaching career in Grand Prairie, the
All right.
school campus?
Very good. I started at Austin Elementary School. I taught, in those days they had 6th grade, you know, and I taught 6th grade and was a coach, you know. Back in those days we had elementary athletics, and I was the coach and 6th grade teacher for 3 years at Austin Elementary School, and then was moved to Lamar Elementary School as acting principal. Mr. B.G. Combs, as you know, was ill and later passed away. I was made principal. Stayed there for 2 years and then moved to Travis. Was principal of Travis Elementary School for 7 years. I moved over to Jefferson Junior High School. We had 9th grade in junior high there at that time. 2 years at junior high school. Moved to administration building as director of business services. And you want me to continue?
Continue
Okay.
right on, because this is a document.
Okay, and I was served as director of business services for 1 year, and then was promoted to assistant superintendent for business, and was assistant superintendent for business for a number of years, 12, 13 years, I guess, and then assistant superintendent for administration, and then deputy superintendent, retired as deputy superintendent.
Because you
Had about 18 years in the school administration building.
because you felt a call to retire because you had other fish to fry, right?
Well, right, yeah, right.
We're going to get to that in a minute.
yeah.
I need to get back with Laura. We need to know about the children.
Oh, my favorite subject.
Oh, yes,
Tracy.
let's look out and name the children and their spouses and your
May
grandchildren.
even talk about my grandchildren?
Oh, do.
Very good, all right. We had 2 sons. Brent Allen Arnold is a teacher and coach, and he lives in Coleman, Texas. He's a high school football coach and teaches senior government there and is very happy there. We have another son, Brian Scott Arnold, who is an attorney in Grand Prairie. He and his family live here. And he married Lori England Arnold, and we have a wonderful daughter-in-law. In fact, she is more our daughter than our daughter-in-law. We love her very, very much. And the 2 very, very bright spots in our lives right now are our 2 grandchildren. We have Clint Harrison Arnold, and I might tell you a little story about that in just a minute,
All right.
who is 3 1/2, and his baby sister, Catherine Janice Arnold, who is 8 months old. And the light of our lives. You know about grandchildren, of
All
course,
right.
so we,
Tell us
we
about
enjoy those. But I would like to tell you about Clint's
You do.
name. As you heard a little bit earlier, my mother was a Harrison. She had a brother named Clint Harrison. And Clint was deceased at age 21, and he was a very outdoorsy type person, athletic, and loved horses, and the same thing that our boys like. And so Brian and Lori wanted to name their son after him. So his name is Clint Harrison Arnold, and they're very proud of that. And then Catherine Janice is named for both of her grandmothers. My middle name is Catherine, and Lori's mother's name is Janice. So we're very, very proud of that also. And
you're
we
very-
enjoy them very
You're
much.
very glad that they're in Grand Prairie, Texas.
We are very glad they're in Grand Prairie. In fact, Clint went with us, well, he goes with us occasionally on little short trips, and Catherine Janice is a little bit young for that right now, but, and her nickname is Katie, so I think she's going to be known mostly as Katie instead of her long name, but they are precious.
Mr.
They
Arnold,
really are.
all of the time that you've been in Grand Prairie teaching and administrating, and even before you became a state representative, name us some of the civic organizations, the clubs, your church, or anything else you'd like to name drop about on this tape. This is your opportunity.
Well, I'd start with our church. I believe it was the second Sunday after we arrived on a hot June day in 1954, we joined the First Baptist Church, and we've been members there ever since. We've been very active in church life all these years. I've served on, I guess, every committee that the church has once or twice, and also served the deacon body a couple of years as president of the deacon body. And it's been our life. It's been a very great portion of our life. I've also, you know, when we moved here in '54, we had a desire to grow professionally, but we also wanted to be a part of community and be a part of things that are happening for the betterment of not only for the kids that we taught, you know, in public school, but also community life in general. So I've been very, very active in civic organization, a charter member of the Evening Optimist Club with 15 years perfect attendance, president of that organization, president of the Grand Prairie Rotary Club, 13 years perfect attendance. I've been very active in Chamber of Commerce, president of the Grand Prairie Chamber of Commerce. I don't believe they call it president now, but it was president.
Chairman of the
yeah,
board.
Chairman of the board.
You
whatever.
were the president.
I was the president, and I was honored. I've been honored by the Chamber of Commerce and some of their special awards, Citizen of the Year and Chamber Member of the Year, I believe. And very active in Boy Scouts, and one of the highlights is I served as chairman of the District Committee for Boy Scouts, and was honored with a Silver Beaver Award, which is very precious. You know, something so totally unexpected, but very much appreciated. YMCA, I served as on the board of YMCA 3 or 4 times, chairman of the board a couple of years, Metropolitan Board in Dallas for a while. I don't know. We've been pretty active, and it's been great. I'm a member of the Masonic Lodge, life member of the Sam R. Hamilton Lodge. Mm-hmm. We treasure that, and I don't know. PTA, of course, that's part of our profession, but I've even been president of PTA.
You bet. I wondered if you were going to mention that.
I'm president of Post PTA, which Mrs. Jackson and a few others, were instrumental in organizing a few years ago. And that was certainly interesting, but PTA has been very much part of my life. You know, I learned early as a principal and as a teacher that the same goals and objectives that related to PTA relate to what teachers and principals are trying to do in the schools. And since we had a commonality there, it just seemed right to me that we ought to be pooling our talents and our energies to try to make it happen on every angle. And so PTA has been very, very good to me, and I certainly enjoyed my time serving in PTA offices and whatever.
Laura?
Yes.
He's had lots of time to tell all the good things he's done, and he's had you teaching and raising a family.
That's right.
What are there other organizations, professional or otherwise, that you'd like to name drop that you've had a part in that you'd like on this genealogy?
Well, as you said, a teaching career and raising a family are two of the most important things that I had going because it took up most of my time. Mm-hmm. And you know, when children are young, you like to be at home with them as much as you can. And that was one of the beauties of being a teacher. You could have some time off, you know, to be with them. But I have been very involved in our church work and have taught in Sunday school class and for a long, long time, and always enjoyed being involved in that. It was just a continuation of what I was doing during the week, but in a different and more special way sometimes. Of course, I was a member of my professional organization through the teachers, and also PTA. I've held offices in our PTA group, so mostly that's basically what it is.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Arnold, let's sort of peel off and get into this big political thing. Oh, state representative. Tell us what brought that to your mind and how exciting it's been to serve as our state representative and all that good stuff, would you?
I'd be delighted to. It certainly has been an enjoyable experience. I kind of got into the, you know, being a state representative because Carlisle Smith, whom we know, you know, a good friend of ours, had decided not to seek re-election. And I was just one semester away from retiring, and so when I learned of his not going to seek re-election, I decided to retire early and run for office, and was elected, and I'm so grateful for the tremendous support and help that I've had in Grand Prairie. It's just been very, very heartwarming to have the kind of support that we've had. And it's been a very enjoyable experience. You know, state government is pretty big, and to be involved in it and to have a small say in what happens on the state level has been really rewarding me. And
Your most, I guess, favorite of all of the legislation that you've presented, what do you think has been the most meaningful to you? I know that you've done things for kids, you've done things for communities. What do you feel like is the most exciting bill that you have been able to sponsor or co-sponsor?
well, I've been pretty fortunate in getting a number of bills passed. The bill really that I had more interest in, I didn't get passed this time. I don't want to be negative, but it's an area, it relates to liability insurance for automobiles that I really have a strong feeling about. But you know, we passed a bill this time. It relates to the flag. I think this probably will be known about longer in that the Texas flag, there was, as you well know, there was not a set protocol as to how you would approach the Texas flag. And so in this last session of the legislature, we did put in place and put in legislation the manner in which you would approach the flag when you pledge the Texas flag. And I think that's probably the outstanding piece of legislation. Probably the one will go down in history and be read about more in the history books.
Laura?
Yes.
What is it like to be the wife of a state representative, and are you called on to aid and abet him in all of these good things, socially and otherwise? Let the people know how exciting that is.
Well, first of all, they're very busy most of the time.
All right.
So you don't see them a lot, and the schedules are very, very busy, especially during the regular sessions. Not so busy during the special sessions, but during the regular session, there are a lot of meetings, very many committee meetings that go on until the wee hours of the morning, and so you really don't see your husbands very much then. And I guess that's when the Legislative Ladies Organization really comes into play, because we have a very large organization and are very active during the regular sessions, and we have luncheons and we have just various things that it's really a support group.
Wonderful.
And it really does help, and it helps you to get acquainted with people. If you didn't have that, it might be a little bit more difficult to really get acquainted with people, especially, you know, the first year or so that you're down there. So I found that to be most helpful, and it's been very rewarding to me to get acquainted with people all over the state and have met some very wonderful people and made some very good friends.
Mr. Arnold, in the 1 minute that we have left, and would you believe we're all gone, please give a word of exhortation to any of the young people that are here. When she winds us down like this, we'll need to wind down, but you must tell them something.
Well, I just say to the youth of our city and to our state that education certainly is still the most important, should be the most important part of their lives. I think that the idea of getting back to being enthused about education, efficiency, having a concern about doing better and making better grades in schools, and keep their lives clean from drugs and alcohol, the things that can be such a distortion toward their lives in the future. And every day in school is important to build a foundation which they can use as they grow older to acquire better education for a better life.
Your Honor, Mr. Arnold, Laura, thank you all very much for being with us today. It is splendid to have you with us. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.
Good.